My name is Berenice Howard Smith. There are 9 ways I think that I can count of on YouTube as to how to say Berenice, and they're all acceptable. I live in Cambridge in the UK, and I am first and foremost a designer. I run a micro agency called Hello Lovely Design and Co, which is designing websites and editorial material, branding. So pretty much designing everything. I call myself a one-stop shop. I also have some training courses that I've just launched as well. So, but on book publishing, yeah, self-publishing, and a design club for people who are non-designers. I also have a podcast as well called The Full Stop, which is for people who are childless not by choice, and their allies, as we call them, or cheerleaders, is the other phrase that we use as well. So we always meet in the middle.
There are moments in life when creativity stops being about ambition and quietly becomes about survival, about holding yourself together, about making sense of loss, about finding something solid when everything else feels uncertain. Bernice has spent her life designing websites, books, brands, and her story goes far deeper than her work. We talk about redundancy, grief, loss, and the long, messy process of building a creative life when the version you imagine no longer exists. This conversation isn't about having it all figured out, it's about showing up anyway. If this episode resonates, follow, leave a review, or you can DM me over on Instagram at Creatively Eccentric. If you would love to be a guest and share your story, register to join the guest waitlist. You'll be the first to hear when applications reopen. The link to sign up will be in the show notes.
I've done an awful lot of apologising in rooms for perhaps not conforming, I think, and it's messy. I think a lot of that journey has been a bit messy. I would say that the design side has always been the thing that's kept me sane. Give me a nice typeface and I'm very happy. And that's fine. It's like my little safety blanket, and it's the thing I know well. But in and around that, I think it has been quite messy. So dealing with that, I think that what life has thrown at me, but going back to where I'm my happy place, I'm very grateful that I do something that I absolutely am passionate about and love and couldn't imagine doing anything else. So that's been really good. And I think bold voices, as I'm getting a little bit more kind of confident, I think, about speaking out, certainly in the past few years because of the full stop, then yeah, being bolder about that, which again I think in turn links to kind of that no apologies. This is who I am. And being upfront and honest about that, I think, is really important.
Yeah, I know life throws a lot of things at us, and
Mm,
we become stronger over time, how we deal with it, etc. So, yeah, it
yeah.
sounds like you had a lot of things going on in your life that that's made you stronger in the end. And I think you've talked about some of those on your podcast
Mm,
experiences as well. Um,
yeah.
what was the moment where you realised, your creativity wasn't about success anymore and about survival or rebuilding your career?
That was probably when I was at the point where I'd been made redundant. Yeah, so redundancy, miscarriage, my mother-in-law passed away, very loved mother-in-law, the cat, everything kind of collided at once and then got made redundant. And I remember someone saying, "Oh, this is an opportunity in the HR department." And I was just like, "No, it really, really isn't." And we'd just gone through the bit where we'd had the last round, what was, I didn't know at the time, was the last round of IVF, which had failed and ended in miscarriage. And I had a choice really of using that redundancy money to either do more IVF, and we only had one embryo left, and there is a very, 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 very slim chance, despite what the media says, a very slim chance of that ever actually surviving, being defrosted. Literally, it's defrosted. It's they are frozen, and or I could do something else. And I ended up going to a job interview in London on a very hot July day and thinking, I don't want to do any more train journeys. I just don't want to do this anymore. I just couldn't. It wasn't for me. And in the interview, actually, I was asked, "Oh, and are you going to be having children? Because we don't want to employ someone." And apart from the outrage of that, there was also that I'd really just don't want to sit here and tell another person that it's no one's business and I'm just tired of this. And I got back into to Cambridge, went to the railway station, and there was this sign on the platform that said master's degrees. And I thought, oh. And a friend of mine happened to be doing one, and I asked her about it. She said, "Oh, go for it, do it. Yeah, it'd be great." And I guess that was probably the point when I thought, this creativity's got something here. And during my master's in graphic design and typography, just to clarify that, I know what it's in, but no one else does until I tell you. Um, I actually created a social design project all around kind of people's stories, and why they may or may not have children, or chose not to have children, all those different routes to that kind of that part of, I suppose, conforming. And I had to stand up in front of the faculty and explain this project, and it was the first time I probably really spoke about not being a parent to anybody, not by choice, and having to find some words. And yeah, that was kind of hard, but it was a really nice kind of way of merging two parts of my life together. Although I always say that, being a designer is the most interesting thing about me. These days, the childlessness is not very interesting, but it is very much kind of the merging at that point of two parts of my life together. And in quite a powerful way at the time. It really was, yeah.
Mm. Um, yeah, that does sound like, I don't know if the stars were aligned or anything, but when you saw
Mm,
that opportunity, but um, before creativity became part of your, and I use creativity as healing, I would say,
yeah.
but what did that period of your life feel like at that time?
Oddly, when I'm in a messy state or a griefy state, I actually create quite well. I've noticed that. So, but in a very kind of unobserved way. So I think it could be quite chaotic at times. It's more streamlined now, but certainly, yeah, I think prior to sort of really embracing creative self, then it wasn't particularly purposeful. A bit pointless, but then sometimes pointlessness means you can be messy, and there's no real. I think that's quite nice. It's quite liberating to be messy as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's strange how some people see creativity as like a band-aid, and some people use it and fully immerse themselves into it. As we know, like many famous artists, they put their whole, we could say, trauma or what life experiences out for the world to see on the canvas, for example. And then some people just use it as a strength to like nurture other people. So how did you define that in your creative freedom?
I don't know that I still have, to be perfectly honest. I guess I probably do use it as kind of a bit of a band-aid sometimes, in that I will create for myself. In fact, I did a thing a few years ago where I thought, oh, I'm just going to just do an art course it was over the course of the pandemic, and it wasn't particularly expensive, and I thought I'd do that, and it was all expression art, things like that, and being a bit abstract. And from that came something else. And I thought, oh, I've got a whole library of work here, which I do occasionally from time to time sell, but under a completely different name. But I never do it with profit in mind. It's never done for sales. And that, again, I think is quite important, because a lot of the creativity that I feel and I do can be around making money. Hello Lovely has to make money. At some form, it pays the wages. Oh, pay something anyway, the dog food, and the vet bills, and everything like that. The
Exactly.
important stuff. So from that point of view, I guess, yeah, it's very much driven, I think, sometimes by money, but I think also from the point of view of a healing process as well, by just fiddling around with art, being messy, doing some painting. I love doing hand lettering or calligraphy. I was trained in calligraphy at a very young age. I had the good fortune to meet a very good calligrapher who's now since retired. That, I think, has always been sort of a place you can get lost in. And then some stuff, the noise, the mental health stuff, things like that, grief and things, tends to either it's there and it's something I can work with and use, or it simply just stops a little bit and things can calm down. And before I know it, an hour or two is gone, and I've created something that might not be that good, but that's okay. It doesn't have to be good. Whereas I think for Hello Lovely, obviously it's got to be, of a standard, because I'm working for clients, but also there's a niceness in playing around with the business as well and going, okay, what do I think I want to do with this? How do I shape that? Do I really have to be strategic. I mean, I do have to be strategic, of course we do, but there is an element of going, okay, it's mine. If I want to just try something out, I just try it out. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I've given it a go, and is there some learning that I can take from that? I think that's a really important way of looking at perhaps create how creativity can create, kind of like from chaos can come kind of something quite beautiful, I think, as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a lot of creatives, they're probably too scared to experiment and be messy and try different ways of doing it. You've got to pay the bills, like you said, with your business, but some of those kind of unusual kind of accidents, sketches, whatever you do, can be put into your everyday working life. So
Gosh, yeah. I think an awful lot of hesitate to say this, but often it's things with branding in particular. It can be just something happens and you're there on the screen, or I start with pen and paper, and we'll be sitting and drawing and creating, and then something will just happen, and it might not be on brief. It's the same with book covers as well. Actually, something will happen, it will be there, and you think, oh, that that could be interesting, and it's kind of that one thing I'll send at the end, maybe in this section of things. Everything will be on the brief and whatever, but there'll be the accident at the end, and often that's the kind of the curious point. People go, "Oh, I hadn't thought of that. I'd like to just try that and develop it a bit further." And they're kind of really good accidents to have. I like that part of exploring and just going down different routes. And it's quite life affirming. I think, oh, that's nice. I quite like an accident for actually being kind of it's sort of like, oh yeah, I can do different things, as opposed to, I can play still. That's it. That's what I'm thinking of. I can still play in and amongst things.
yeah,
Mm.
I was just thinking when you were saying that, I do miss like don't know about you, university days where was a bit of a playground of experiment, and
Oh
that's one of
yeah.
the things I need to get back to myself, like just not caring about the end result and just be free. So yeah, definitely.
Completely, that totally chimes with me, Heather. Yeah, I just miss university for just you could just go and find something. I remember stumbling across all the printing presses at my university and going, "Oh, I just want to hang out here," and I almost switched my degree to print. I really, and I thought, oh, because I just love the sound of the printing presses. Um, yeah, I still do. I think they're lovely, but I didn't. But it was just a happy sort of, let's play and do something different. That totally chimes with me. Having all those tools and fun things to do. Yeah, yeah.
I know we live in a digital age, and one thing I miss is the hands-on, the craftsmanship of things, the tactile
Mm,
of touching ink and paper, and
yeah.
yeah, that's what I definitely need to. One of the many things I want to get back to doing and
You and me. I see you
experimenting.
there.
See you there, definitely.
Totally, totally my thing too. I don't know. Yeah, I watched Great Pottery Throwdown, and I remember doing. Oh god, addicted to that. And I remember doing pottery when I was at art school, like years and years ago, long before my MA, long before my degree, and I just did I don't know what I was doing there really, but anyway, I don't think anyone does. And it was just like, oh, I remember having a go on a potter's wheel, and every time I see it, I'm like, oh, I'd like to do that. And my husband's like, oh God, it's going to be another messy thing. Have you tried knitting or crochet? No, 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 no. It's got to be messy. It's not something I need to do in the house. I want to go to my shed with the potter's wheel. That'd be fine. But anyway, yeah. In another life, maybe, when I've got more time. Yeah.
Definitely, you're just expressing yourself, and you just need the space to do
Yeah.
it, and just need
Yeah.
to let you get on with it, really.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I think because you were talking about, you have so many different strings to your bow. I mentioned earlier, like you've got coding, UX, you stained glass in.
Yeah.
What else don't you do, or
Um,
do you do?
I'm not. I'm not terribly good at probably paying attention to things that need doing. No, actually, quite good at doing stuff around my house. But yeah, sometimes the common sense. Yeah. Where is she? Oh yeah, she's doing something. Yeah, creative or whatever. Um, yeah, I guess it's curiosity. I think. Um, yeah, I'm just curious about things, how things work, and what they do. I find quite interesting as well. So yeah, stained glass. I think I also have a thing where I end up kind of doing things and realizing I've got a bit more down the rabbit hole than I probably envisaged I would. So I think the stained glass is like that. I thought I've always wanted to have a go at it, and I'm very lucky that I live near Ely Cathedral, and Ely Cathedral's got some beautiful windows in it. And I thought, I wonder if I could give it a go. And a friend of mine that I was working with at the time said we could just go for like a like a short evening course. There was one nearby, and for some reason I kind of was better at it than I thought. And I think a few bits of glass and a decent cutter, and it's not too expensive to get into initially as such. Um, and I thought, oh, the teacher was really lovely, and she said, I'm doing a city and girls. Do you want to, give it a go? And I thought, yeah, okay. It was kind of at a time when it was okay to do that. I had to stop because of the you actually do use lead in it with strips of lead, and it can be quite toxic. And I was going through all the IVF stuff, so I stopped it for a long time. But occasionally go back and do it, and I've done a few windows in and around the streets where I live, fan lights and things, and a couple in my house as well, which has just been really lovely just to do something like that. Yeah, and I just fell into it really. I just I'm actually better at it than I could considered I thought I would be. Yeah. Yeah, and I thought, I might as well carry on for a bit. Yeah. Whereas things that I don't, I guess it's that kind of perhaps slight neurodivergence in that I kind of like, if I'm not interested, I just no way that you can get me to do it. I'm just not bothered at all. It's like a kind of like trying to move a donkey. It's really hard, but actually, something like that, it was just, yeah, I can, I give it a go. Yeah, I'll walk away if it doesn't. I think it's like a book. If you don't want to read get a book and it doesn't really kind of chime with you, life's too short to try and struggle through. Move on to another one. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I've got a few stained glass panels in my house as well, and I've seen people come in and fix it, and I'm just fascinated how you need to have patience and time and effort to do it. They took it away for several weeks. They came back, they installed it. They spent so much time and care. When I'm just trying to do anything, starting a new project or kind of new idea, I do feel like some people, like creatives, are a bit fearful of starting from scratch. They want to be all singing and dancing and professional. I was wondering, like, starting from scratch, has that changed your relationship in any way with, for example, with fear or maybe even with failure at any point in your career?
I think I want to start from the end of that question and just focus on the word failure, because I think that, yeah, there's a lot around that word that I could untangle. But I think when about not apologizing for things, I think often I certainly, in terms of going through failed IVF, I get failure. It's called failed IVF, and it failed. And I always say to people that are in that kind of state of coming to terms with that it failed you. You didn't fail. It's the IVF that failed. Just really be clear that it's not anything anyone ever did, because that can weigh heavy. And when that can create, I think, a state of fear. It did for me, certainly. I was in a state of fear for a long time. Certain things would just give me a state of fear, and I've realized that I lived to a point with trauma from that time. So those sorts of fears, I think, going through that made some things easier, with no disrespect to anyone listening to this, and it's not intended at all. The COVID and lockdowns was something I could deal with. I could handle that because I've been through, I think, just that absolute loss, a loss that no one really talked about at all. It just isn't spoken about. And lots of communities, lots of online spaces for freelancers tend to be more pronatal. And if you are the one there that doesn't have children, it can feel like you have to apologize for not joining in with certain conversations or something. And I no longer do that. Um, and I will choose carefully whether to say anything about what I've been through or not, depending on who's in the room and depending on whether it's helpful or not. Generally speaking, if I happen to mention it, there's tumbleweed, and that's hard too. But at the same time, it's really tough to sort of sit on the outside edges of a conversation and not feel included at all. It can really hurt. That said, had I have been fortunate to have been a parent and been through IVF and it worked, I would not have really realised that it didn't either, or whatever. I would have been utterly oblivious to. Hence, trying to meet people in the middle and just saying, "Look, this is the thing. Is it all right if we can we just change the subject to something that's a bit more inclusive? Would that be okay? Could we talk about something else?" And I think that's fair and respectful to everybody because they've all got so much more in common, and in so many ways, not least kind of the whole issue of running businesses or being creators wherever we show up. So I think that, yeah, failure and fear are very interesting bedfellows, I think, when it comes to sort of my life. I think to many other people's lives that I encounter in the stuff I do with the full stop too. I would say that it's quite going through that has certainly made me realize that I have, I think, some hidden strengths, stuff I didn't know that I could do. And starting from scratch doesn't really hold any fears as such. Other than that, I think probably the biggest blocker for me is not a fear of failure so much as probably time is probably my biggest blocker. How am I going to fit this in? But I think maybe also it's given me the freedom to just give it a go and walk away from it and not feel, I generally feel that I'm perfectly imperfect. I've always said that about myself, particularly the last few years, perfectly imperfect. And I do believe strongly that, I see some fantastic people doing brilliant things, but also having the the, actually just that loveliness of being able to meet people and have a genuine sort of honest conversation behind the scenes, and you generally realize that everyone is kind of in a similar position. Nobody is alone in what they're doing. I absolutely know for sure that I'm not the only freelancer out there who is childless not by choice. I know this because I know of others. So I think realizing that we're not alone, I think, is really important. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a difficult period of time in your life. Is there any places that you felt safe to open up or step into, regards to, you know, things that you went through? Was there any places you could go
Sure.
to?
Yeah, in terms of sort of business networks, and I really want to just say a massive thank you to Emma Cossey and the Freelance Lifestyle, because I remember going on her podcast one very, very long time ago. And that was just really, really lovely just to have someone who generally met in the middle. I think that's a really nice thing to do. I would always say it's kind of with care because people I think it's really hard to pick out anything else other than that because I think it depends on who's in the space, who's running it, who's in the room. I find that can be quite hard sometimes. Other groups I've gone to in terms of business networks has been Drive the Network, which I've been part of for absolutely years. And other groups tend to be more creative ones. I think groups where people can generally they encourage a wider conversation in terms of who people are and who they are in the room, and it's not the opening questions and the questions that bind people together are more than probably about one's life so much as perhaps all the other things that make up why we're in a space. It's not necessarily about being a designer. It's not being about my name. It's not about whether I'm a parent or not. It's just generally about just having a really good time and being supported as well. I think finding those places of trust in general, kind of, I think, childless places to a point can be okay. I wouldn't ever say that they're utterly safe and warm because they're not. They all have the same dynamics as everywhere else does. And people aren't always friends because of childlessness. It's not the glue that binds everyone together. I absolutely live and die on that one. Um, and it can be difficult as well. So I absolutely think that trying places out, meeting in the middle, just checking them out, giving them a go, I think is, again, it's that curiosity and just seeing what fits for people. But I think those two are the ones that I think are really, really great for me. And of course, I'm part of being freelance as well. That's really good. Uh, but yeah, I definitely Drive the Network's been really, really good for me, and so's Emma Cossey's group as well.
Mm,
Yeah, very supportive.
yeah, I think also with your podcast as well, people
Yeah.
you reach a lot of people out and internationally. and get
Yes, we do.
to
Yeah.
listen to people who you might not have, you know, thought of, who would have contacted you on your podcast.
Oh my goodness me. We've had Stella Duffy, OBE, who is just like absolutely brilliant. Came on Swirl a lot. She's fantastic. We loved her. And actually had the privilege of meeting her as well. She's psychotherapist but a well published author as well. And BB Lynch, who's written in lots of newspapers. A couple of journalists on there and writers as well, but lots of other people. We give space to people who don't do those things as well. There's a wide diversity of conversation. It's more about the conversations we have rather than the people that rather than kind of notoriety. We're not looking for famous people. It's always great, we'd never say no if Jennifer Aniston wanted to come on. That would be cool. And that's probably about the only well, there's actually quite a lot of people out there who are famous and childless, but you never quite know the story behind it all. But it's yeah, for us, yeah, it's worldwide and it's sort of just a bit weird. We've gone to places and people have gone, oh my God, it's you from the Full Stop. And we're like, wow, okay, all right, then, yeah. That thing you said, oh my God, what did I say? What did I say? Oh God, I can't remember. That's all a bit kind of like odd. And in fact, my co-presenter, co-director, in fact, actually, Michael has got a email came in the other week from a TV station in Australia where he lives, and we're just like, oh my God, you're like going to be famous on the telly and everything. But actually, it's a massive accolade for him because he's probably one of the few men who talk about childless men, and there are more childless men than there are childless women. There's thought to be 25% of men are childless not by choice, and 20% of women. So yeah, he's doing a brilliant job in talking about that. And it also happens to be that he is an engineer for a quarry company, so he's not your typical kind of, I don't know, you wouldn't expect someone like him to speak out about that, but he's absolutely passionate about helping other
Mm.
people. So massive
Yeah, it does affect
admiration for him.
everybody. It doesn't just affect, I know, focuses tends to be on the women, but it definitely affects not just the men and the families,
Mm.
extended families. Yeah, so it's good
It
that you
does.
have a
It does.
balance. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a very good chance that everyone listening to this podcast will know someone who is, even if that person hasn't told them. That it's that many of us. It's quite statistically likely that we'll all know someone. Yeah.
It's definitely building a community as well, and creating a space for others to become, to
Yeah,
have
we
that
do.
conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, we do. We have an online community of our own as well as the podcast, and that's been really interesting as well. Kind of, you get to meet the people who listen. And that's really good actually. It's really nourishing. I think that's it. Yeah. It's been the Full Stop has been a process of healing, I think, for me. The two were in tandem, I think. I'm much more braver with Hello Lovely that because I think I've got an outlet somewhere else for the other stuff and I can just show up and embrace the design side. But they do cross over as well. For ages I tried to keep them well apart. Even on the podcast, I called myself Berenice Smith and missed out the Howard, which is ridiculous, really. But I am the same person, and now it's all updated because I thought I can't, I'm not going to hide all of this. It's who it is. But it took a long time to put those parts of my life in the same room, if you like. That was hard.
Mm. So,
Mm.
what have you learned about storytelling when people are sharing their pain and they're not, being polished or protecting their narratives? What have you learnt about their stories?
I've learned that we have a lot in common. That I think with any situation, and I talk about childlessness, but I'm also a coach, and I think in design terms as well, then there's an awful lot of people going through the same thing, but in a different way. And there's always something in common, I think, with that. Certainly, I think at the moment in design, the big conversation is obviously around AI and around, I think Canva and Affinity is kind of thrown a bit like, oh God, that's all happened. And what do we do with Adobe? And lots of conversations around that and what actually is a designer. So I think there's quite a lot of that kind of narrative out there. And they're all conversations in common. They just kind of go around, and people have a different sort of way out of it. Um, and I think it's listening for me. I absolutely say that listening is the most important thing. And that's the biggest thing I've learned. In coaching, we talk about full body listening as opposed to kind of just listening to some words and then just tuning out a little bit and coming in. full body listening. And I think that's the most powerful gift that we can give to anybody else, whatever that issue is, whatever the story is, to listen to that story and listen to it well, and to listen to it with our whole body and engage with it. And that it costs nothing but a little bit of time and attention. And I think it means an awful lot. And to give feedback in a really nice way, we can all learn something from somebody else. I know I learn from my friends who are parents very much about the challenges that they have, and they learn from me. And I think that's just absolute gold, because it's bringing people together rather than creating divides. I don't like divides. I don't think that's healthy at all. We can all learn from each other, very much so. Yeah.
Yeah. And as well as with your podcast, you're obviously on social media, and you're building a community that way as well. Who are responding to like honest or imperfect, social media posts, for example. What does that teach you about connections, say, versus perfection?
I think being authentic, I know it's bandied around a lot, isn't it? Authentic, it comes everywhere now. But I think that's just kind of it. Yeah. I'm all for treating LinkedIn like early Facebook when it was decent. But I'm just completely random sometimes. And then I think, oh, I must be more official and I must do this properly. And I've never had an Instagram grid. I know I'm a designer and I just know I don't. I
It's
literally,
all
oh,
changing
here's,
anyway. It's always
oh, I
changing the
can't be.
goalposts.
Yeah, actually, life's too short. I mean, the other couple of weeks ago, I posted a picture of a bowl of soup I'd made because it was green and I thought it was lovely. I think soup's fine. Then there might be some sort of something about, I don't know, some nerdy thing about a font I saw or a sign or something like that. There's generally kind of a lot of found things and interesting things. I think just creating it and responding to social media, I think, in a way that is nourishing, I think is important. So showing up with things that are kind of interesting, curious, a bit kind of crazy and unique sometimes, but authentic, I think is absolutely fine, because people tend to respond to the strangest things. Some posts of mine, I've thought no one's ever going to respond to it, but they have. And then some of them are official ones. People just like, no, nothing. It's just tumbleweed. So I think and I'm an absolute advocate for curating feed as well. Literally hide, mute, delete, unfollow, whatever. Um, just make it your own and just don't rely on it. I think all the stuff going around with TikTok being sold, and of course, let's not talk about X. Then I think certain parts of Facebook too. I think when I always just think that it's not necessarily stuff in Australia about children being banned from social media. I think let's talk about the people that make money from these platforms and the dark things that they do. They're not healthy. It's not good. So, but yeah, yeah,
I know it's you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. We
God,
have
damn
those
you.
tools at our disposal, and also to be cautious how we going to use them. And
Yes,
yeah,
yeah.
we just need to be mindful of that as well. So,
I think so. Yeah,
um,
never rely on
mm,
them, I think is my
no,
thing. But
exactly.
use them as much as they use us, because that's at the
Mm,
end of the day how it all works, isn't
yeah,
it?
they're running a
Um,
business.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think for people that, oh God, say this carefully, but people I think who don't need it in terms of earning money, then it's okay to say, "Oh, just delete that app." It's not like easy for the rest of us sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there like any social media platform that you use? Is there like a comment or a reaction you received that changed the way you think about your work or your audience?
Oh, I don't know that there was one particular comment, but I do remember on LinkedIn, and I do use LinkedIn probably more than most other platforms for sure. And I do remember one of the first things that I ever wrote on LinkedIn about design. Um, Someone, I couldn't tell you who, came back with some comment about, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, or something like that. I can't even remember. It was something to do with fonts or something. It's a very, very early post. And I remember I was on my way to a marketing meetup. Again, another great place to go, the marketing meetup. And I sat there for the entire duration of the talk thinking, oh, maybe I better delete my post. Maybe I delete it. And I ended up deleting it because I thought, oh, that just, it hurt. It really hurt. And it wasn't until a bit later talking to other people and going, "Oh, that's that." I was, "Oh, it happens to other people as well. There are these guys out there who will, sit and say stuff, like you're wrong, um, without any evidence, just because they disagree." And it put me off LinkedIn for a while, and then I was very lucky to kind of meet other people out there, John Aspiri and people like that, all doing stuff with LinkedIn and realizing actually it wasn't me, it's them, and to just be brave and give it another go and try again. So I think probably that, not one particular thing. I've had other stuff where I've been in a couple of newspapers, for my sins, the Times, but not yet the Daily Mail, thank God. They haven't asked, but about the Times was a bit, oh, I don't know. But then again, educating and talking to people who might not get it, I think is important as well. But I remember being in that, and some of the comments to an article about childlessness is, that I was bitter and twisted and think of all the orphans, those sorts of things. Lots of complimentary stuff. And it was really, really hard to kind of ignore that. And a few friends were kind of, I'm going to join up and I'm going to give them what. I was just like, just don't, because you're just wasting your time. They're just there to create trouble. But it was hard. It was really hard with that. And I've kind of been very careful about those sorts of things too, because I don't think the people that write or contribute to articles are necessarily cared for either. It's kind of, you've done the article, it's submitted, it's published, comments are open, and you have to deal with it in your own way. And if you don't have people around you, a good network, then it can be really hard not to be affected by that. And to have to educate people on why, adoption isn't right for everybody is exhausting sometimes, I have to say. Yeah, I think
Uh,
it's,
Probably if you were like very well known in your circles and you feel like you have to represent the whole of a society with the similar issues, and you
yeah,
need to protect yourself at the end of the day, and your well-being, because once it's out there into the world, it's hard
yeah,
to
yeah.
take it back. Yeah, yeah.
It is, yeah. And I think if you've got a name that stands out as well, then I think it's very easy to find. I'm always very conscious of that. I think with things like, protecting Hello Lovely. I work on children's books, by the way. So, and I love kids, and I've got plenty of children in my life through other ways. But yeah, it can be a bit like, yeah, I had one person came up to me who, not a client, but approached me and asked me about doing some work. And bearing in mind, I've worked for things like brands like Rigby Star and OUP and Cambridge University Press, other brands as well, that and done quite a lot of children's stuff, early years things, all the way up to sort of A levels and stuff. Well versed in what makes a good children's book and an educational piece. She'd asked me to give her a quote, and then asked me my qualifications, and it's all listed on the website that I had at the time. But then said, "What personally qualifies you, though? Not having children." Well, I don't necessarily think that me being a parent or not being a parent qualifies me to be, to design or not design a book. And that was quite eye opening. I mean, it was one of those things where you think, oh, my class are all really lovely and they're all really great. And they were. But I thought, goodness me, that is a red flag I was not expecting. I really wasn't expecting that. And that kind of forced me to go, right, I'm going to make these two things in my life completely separate. And I'm not going to talk one and the other, but then realized later on it wasn't me, it was kind of her. And I've never seen the book come out because I did look for it, unless it's under a pseudonym, I never saw it published. But yeah, that's the equivalent of the job interview in London where they're asking me if I'm going to have a family. It's just overstepping a boundary, I think, for me, a real big boundary, because it's, yeah, I design very well, whichever my market is, and, you know, generally adjust. But yeah, that was a hard one, very
Mm,
sobering.
mm.
Yeah,
Yeah, even though you had that unfortunate experience, you probably learnt from that and said, well, they probably weren't the person or company or organisation I
yeah,
wanted to work for in the first place. You're putting
exactly.
safeguards in to say, okay, right, now I know the red flags, know what to look out for,
Yeah,
and you don't need
yeah.
the hassle and the grief as well.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you could never put in any reg flag document because you wouldn't ever know that it was going to
Until it
happen. You'd be
happens,
like,
yeah,
where did that come from? Okay, yeah, I
yeah,
didn't think about that before.
out of the blue, yeah.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, but it's another one of those kind of things that you think, oh yeah, that's just then not the right fit, and that's absolutely fine. And ordinarily, I'd pass them on to another designer because there's lots of brilliant designers out there that could do it. But I thought, no, your flags, there are too many, and I'm not comfortable passing that person on. To be fair,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, I can relate to that because I used to be like one of those people pleasers where I would just bend over backwards to fit into a round peg in a square hole kind of scenario. And no, it's not what you just. I'm now happy to walk away and go, right, okay, it is what it
Good for
is,
you.
move on. And yeah, I definitely get that.
Yeah. It's quite empowering, isn't it, to do that? I
Definitely.
like that feeling. Yeah. It
Mm.
comes with life, I think. And yeah, life experiences just going, I've had enough of that now. Yeah. But it
Yeah,
takes a
life's
lot
too
of
short.
learning to get there.
Yeah, exactly.
Unfortunately.
There's a part of the conversation I love to ask my guests. It's called Studio Drawer. It's a bit of a play on words. It's like the behind the scenes, that drawer, that messy drawer you don't want anyone to know about. What is something in your desk or studio drawer that you use to design with that you can't do without?
Oh, I'm actually properly looking now because this drawer is absolutely a complete and absolute mess, to be fair. I have numerous pens, more pens. However, the one thing that I do have in here, which probably nobody else will have, I don't think, that actually is important and reminds me that I can do what I do. It's my Blue Peter badge. Yeah, I have. I've actually got three. Anyway, but that's one of them. My mum's got the rest because I'd probably lose them all. I'm allowed one, and I would probably lose them all. And although I don't actually use it to design with, it reminds me that even from about the age of about 7, I was still busy drawing stuff. So that for me, I think is quite important in terms of reminding me. And the other thing is just more pens. I have so many pens. I always return back to pen and paper and pencil. Always, it's just so important to me to still have that connection with paper. And if there's any kind of drawing challenge, providing I've got time and I remember to finish it, I always kind of like, oh, drawing challenge, I'll do that. I might not put it out on social media, but I'll sit and do, I don't know, 31 days of January, or Inktober is a favourite too, just to kind of get sort of something going. But my Blue Peter badge means an awful lot to me because um, don't meet many people that have one. And it reminds me that I always have somewhere in me been a bit as my family called it at the time, bit arty. You're a bit arty. I'm like, yeah, I'm a bit arty. Yeah, I was going to put that actually somewhere in my kind of thing, a bit arty, in credit to my grandmother, my late grandmother. She probably quite like that. Yeah.
Brilliant. Cool. The next question I have for you, it's similar, but it's what's material or tool or medium you've always wanted to experiment with but haven't yet?
Oh, I think I've done a lot of them. I would really like to do something around bringing paper and fabric together. I'm a real magpie for fabric, and I quite like that. Maybe something more textile art, textile based. I think that might be quite interesting. I've not really ever done that. That would be good. I think that's definitely a medium. I think most paint things I've had a bash at. I'd also quite like to pick up my spirograph again. I've got loads of I've got tons of boxes of spirograph, and they're actually all complete. I don't know how I've managed to keep all the wheels, but I keep meaning to do something with that. And I always had a thought about, could I do something with firing stained glass patterns onto glass? But I'd no longer have a kiln. I had a kiln briefly, but there just isn't really any room for it, so I don't have one. But that kind of thing, sorts of, yeah, experimentation. Whether I could do spirograph in a different way, never did work it out. Regret that I didn't. But yeah, something with textiles would be good. It's not something I've done before. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like going back to uni days again, what we said about experimentation and trying things
Mm,
out. That sounds
yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah.
Cool. Last question for you in the studio drawer. Who or what never fails to inspire you, no matter how many times you revisit?
Eric Spiekerman. That's the quote behind me: "Design will save the world." Shortly after rock and roll does. Everything he says is just like, yeah, I get that. It doesn't matter how brilliant he is and how just so, oh, just so unique in what he does and so creative, and his entire just eye for, I think, typography. Some of the stuff that he comes out with on his blog and writes about is very kind of relatable. Pitching work, how, free pitch, a lot of the page I've got, or the words on my website about a pitch, there's a quote from him on there. It's just proper human stuff. He's worked his way up through studios, and you can tell that. And I think every time I read anything that he's written, I just think, yeah, I get that. I understand that relates to me, even though he's just a bit of an icon in terms of, well, he's an icon in terms of design and typography.
What would you tell a creative listening who feels maybe broken, lost, behind, or unsure? How do they feel confident again?
Just reach out to someone. I would always say that the best people view others as collaborators, not competitors. So if you find someone like that and they can give you a hand up, and we absolutely need to give each other a hand up always, I think that's just a little bit of that battle won, just having that conversation. But most of all, just talk to someone, because we all know somebody. Ask for some help. We've always, at some point, just felt utterly hopeless about things. Talk to someone.
So, if anybody wanted to get to find out about your business and reach out to you on socials, how would they do that?
LinkedIn's best. Berenice Howard Smith is where I am. But also the website is hellolovely.design, and the full stop is the fullstoppod.com.